spirit and the renouncing spirit, asked Pushta Krishna Swami, returning to the theme. Prabhupada asked. Although the question was pointed, he remained poised and detached from their party divisions. His idea of what to do was definite, but his method of teaching it was careful and gradual. He already knew well the difficult task of satisfying divergent views among his strong-minded disciples. For years he had been making the ultimate decisions and teaching his disciples how to go forward in a united way. Once again, an issue was building that only he could resolve if they would listen. Pushta Krishna. For example, as we have been discussing, there are different tendencies between the brahmacharis and grihastas. The attitude of the brahmacharis is toward renunciation. If a brahmachari gives up his brahmachari life to become grihasta, that means he is more inclined to the enjoying spirit, at least to some extent. So how to deal with this situation? Prabhupada, if you want to enjoy, who can stop you? Tamal Krishna. But we cannot support it. We cannot support this enjoyment that he should take on himself. Prabhupada, according to different positions and attitudes, the 4 ashrams are there. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. This means that everyone is not on the equal platform. There are different platforms, but the whole idea is how to give up the propensity of enjoyment. That is wanted. Srila Prabhupada ki. Is it disappearance or appearance? So it says Parameshwari Das, but essentially Parameshwar. It's Purushottam, yeah. There's nothing on this?
Maybe disappearance, they couldn't find it, they just found the wrong one.
There is. Aye. So, disappearance of Purushottam Das Thakur. Since birth, Purushottam Das was merged in the service of the lotus feet of Nityananda Prabhu. In Krishna Leela, he was Dama, one of the cow-herd boyfriends of Krishna and Balaram. He was the 10th Gopal. He was the son of Sadashiva Kaviraj and grandson of Kamsari Sena. Formerly in Krishna Leela, Sadashiva Kaviraj was Chandravali Gopi and Kamsari Sena was Ratnavali Gopi. Purushottam Das Thakur's son was Kanu Thakur. It is said that just after Kanu Thakur's birth, his mother died. When he was about 12 days old, Sri Nityananda Prabhu took him to his home in Kadadaha. When he was 5 years old, he went to Vrindavan with Janava Mata, and upon seeing the ecstatic symptoms of Kanu Thakur, the Goswamis gave him the name Kanu Thakur. Purushottam Das Thakur sometimes lived in Sukhasagara. All the deities installed by Purushottam Das Thakur were formerly situated in Beladanga Gram. But when the temple was destroyed, the deities were brought to Sukhasagara. When that temple merged in the bed of the Ganges, the deities were brought by Janavamata's deity to Sahabadanga Bedigram. Since that place has also been destroyed, the deities are now situated in the village named Chandudegram. Sometimes what would happen is that these villages where these great devotees established temples, then the course of the Ganges would change and it would flood them, and then they would have to move them. This was the case with Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. At one point it was temporarily lost and then it was rediscovered again by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. Srila Purushottam Das Thakur ki jai. Thanks. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, entitled Maharaj Rahugana meets Jad Bharat. Text 5, isn't it? 6. Okay. So I'll just go through this myself. Ahokastam bratur vyaktam uruparashranto dirgam advanam eka eva uhivan suchiram nati pivana samhananango jarasa chopadrito bhavan sakeno eva para ete sangatina iti bahu vipralabdo pyavijaya Rachita dravya guna karmasaya swacharama kalivare vastuni samstana visheshe ham mametyanandyaropita mitya pratyayo brahmabhutash tushnim shibikam purvavad avaha. Please repeat. Aho, alas, kashtam, how troublesome it is. Brata, my dear brother. Vyaktam, clearly. Uru, very much. Parishranta, fatigued. Dirgam, along. Udvanam, path. Eka, alone. Eva, certainly. Uhivan, you have carried. Suchiram, for a long time. Na, not. Atipiva, very strong and stout. Na, nor. Samhana na anga, having a firm, tolerant body. Jarasa, by old age. Cha, also. Upadruta, disturbed. Bhavan, yourself. Sake, my friend. No eva, not certainly. Apare, the others. Ete, all these. Sangatina, co-workers. Iti, thus. Bahu, very much. Vipralabda, sarcastically criticized. Happy, although. Avijaya, by nescience. Rachita, manufactured. Dravya guna karma ashaya. In a combination of material elements, material qualities, and the results of past activities and desires. Swacharama kalivari, in the body, which is moved by the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego. Vastuni, in such physical things. Samstana visheshe, having a particular disposition. Aham mama, I and mine. Iti, in this way. Anadya ropita, not interposed. Mithya, false. Pratyaya, belief. Brahmabhuta, who was self-realized, standing on the Brahman platform. Tushnim, being silent. Shibikam, the palanquin. Purvavat, as before. Uvaha, carried. Translation. King Rahugana told Jad Bharat, how troublesome this is, my dear brother. You certainly appear very fatigued because you have carried this palanquin alone without assistance for a long time and for a long distance. Besides that, due to your old age, you have become greatly troubled. My dear friend, I see that you are not very firm, not very strong and stout. Aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you? In this way, the king criticized Jad Bharat with sarcastic words, yet, despite being criticized in this way, Jad Bharat had no bodily conception of the situation. He knew that he was not the body, for he had attained his spiritual identity. He was neither fat, lean, nor thin, nor had he anything to do with a lump of matter, a combination of the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements. He had nothing to do with the material body and its two hands and legs. In other words, he had completely realized his spiritual identity, aham brahmasmi. He was therefore unaffected by this sarcastic criticism from the king. Without saying anything further, he continued carrying the palanquin as before. Please repeat. King Rahugana told Jad Bharat, how troublesome this is. My dear brother, you certainly appear very fatigued because you have carried this palanquin alone, without assistance, for a long time and for a long distance. Besides that, due to your old age, you have become greatly troubled. My dear friend, I see that you're not very firm, nor very strong and stout. Aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you? In this way, the king criticized Jad Bharat with sarcastic words. Yet, despite being criticized in this way, Jad Bharat had no bodily conception of the situation. He knew that he was not the body, for he had attained spiritual identity. He was neither fat, lean, nor thin, nor had he anything to do with a lump of matter, a combination of the five gross and three subtle elements. He had nothing to do with the material body and its two hands and legs. In other words, he had completely realized his spiritual identity, aham brahmasmi. He was therefore unaffected by the sarcastic criticism from the king. Without saying anything, he continued carrying the palanquin as before. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Jad Bharat was completely liberated. He did not even care when the dacoits attempted to kill his body. He knew that he certainly was not the body. Even if the body were killed, he would not have cared, for he was thoroughly convinced of the proposition found in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. He knew that he could not be killed even if his body were killed. Although he did not protest, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his agent could not tolerate the injustice of the dacoits. Therefore, he was saved by the mercy of Krishna, and the dacoits were killed. In this case, while carrying the palanquin, he also knew that he was not the body. This body was very strong and stout, in sound condition, and quite competent to carry the palanquin. Due to his being freed from the bodily conception, the sarcastic words of the king did not at all affect him. The body is created according to one's karma, and material nature supplies the ingredients for the development of a certain type of body. The soul the body covers is different from the bodily construction. Therefore, anything favourable or mischievous done to the body does not affect the spirit soul. The Vedic injunction is asango hyayam purusha. The spirit soul is always unaffected by material arrangements. Om Agyanat Marandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhukam Karoti Vachalam Bhagam Lagate Grimya Kripatamam Vande Shigirim Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pravanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Rasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Interesting, we'll see one word here, Bharata, my dear brother. So this is actually a showing another example of how the Sanskrit language is the origin of other languages. This word bharata, meaning brother. There's many words like that. And we can see that by Maharaja Rahugana's address to Janabharata that he was very intelligent. They say that, what is it they say about sarcasm? It's the highest form of, no, the lowest form of wit and the highest form of intelligence for a fool. There's a saying which goes like that, because anyone can be sarcastic. All you have to do is say the opposite and put a bit of a attitude towards it. But we see that Maharaja Rahugana is quite intelligent because he's practically taken every aspect of the whole thing very intelligently using the sarcasm. He picks up various points. One is that he appears very fatigued, and because he's so old and so weak, which means basically he's not old, he's young, and he had quite a fit physique form. And he was blaming the other fellow carriers as well, saying, are they not helping you? So it was everything he was pointing to was like, it's all your fault, what you're doing. So sometimes sarcasm may be used. So it's not necessary, and we can also use it in devotional services, although it's not the best. If it's done in a joking spirit, it can be nice. I remember Jananda Maharaj once quite subtly chastised me by using sarcasm, and it was very clever the way he did it. At first I didn't realise it, and then I realised, oh, I've just been chastised, that was nice. He took the time to put me right. And this is the thing, if someone takes the time to put you right, we shouldn't feel offended, we shouldn't feel some inimical attitude. Who do you think you are? You know, we should be thinking that I should be getting chastised every minute of the day, I'm such a rascal. But sometimes we don't think like that, we think, I'm so good, you know, I'm so perfect, that why should anyone think they've got a right to chastise me? So in this way, if we're not humble, it's very difficult to make advancement in devotional service. This is the most important quality of a devotee, because from that, all the other qualities gain access to the heart. If we have some humility, because we may commit so many different mistakes, have so many faults, etc. But if we're humble, we can take direction and we can grow. So the humility is actually just like in the garden, if you have some good soil, then you can grow. You've got good conditions, so humility creates the good conditions for the growing of the other devotional principles. So we don't have to think whether we're materially qualified or we have so many other characteristic flaws. But if we can just accept some direction, if we're looking for direction, if we're looking to make advancement, then when it comes, we don't take offense. We think, Krishna's sending me this message, I've been looking for this. I've been wondering how I can make advancement, rather than Krishna maybe sending some along because we're praying to the deities, please engage me in your service, and someone comes along and says, can you do this? And you say, nah, I'm too busy chanting. I'm too busy asking for service to do any service. I've heard that before. I'm too busy chanting now. Of course, it's important we chant all the rounds, and we do our sadhana completely, you know, and that's more important because without the chanting, then we don't have that connection. You know, the purpose. Without chanting and without reading, then we'll forget why we're doing what we're doing. We'll lose that taste. We can lose that connection. Doubts will come into the mind. So this also shows us that the more if we feel some doubts or we feel some lack of enthusiasm for engaging in service or for applying the process of Krishna consciousness, it simply means that we've taken our mind off of the goal, and the aspects of material energy come into play, which therefore bring the mode of ignorance and create doubts. So when we have doubts, the best thing to do is to continue reading, chanting, and doing our service. Just like, say you've been working outside and you've been working out in the fields and in the rain and it's all muddy, and maybe you slipped and you fell in the mud and it's all over you. So you get in the shower to get cleaned, and you're in there for a couple of minutes, then you happen to notice that you're still not clean. You don't think, oh, forget this, I'm out of here. I've been in the shower for 2 minutes, I'm still not clean. Let me just go and roll in the mud again. So this is why we have to continue with the process of devotional service. It is cleaning, but it takes a bit of time. So Srila Rupa Goswami says that we have to be patient. This is a very important aspect of success in devotional service, is to be patient. We've been in the material world a long, long time. Prabhupada said that since time immemorial, it's practically untraceable. It's not that we just came in last lifetime or a couple of lifetimes or this lifetime. We're so conditioned that we relate to this material world as our home, and life after life we try to build a permanent home in this material world, because it is second nature we have acquired, which is a conditioned nature, practically to the point where we don't even have a choice. We always have a choice, but we allowed ourselves to be so conditioned that we don't even give ourselves the opportunity for a choice, that we've practically predetermined how we're going to act in given situations. But the fact is, we do have a choice, and this is where Krishna consciousness gives us that choice, is that we have the choice to take to Krishna consciousness, take shelter in Krishna, take shelter in the devotees, the directions they may give us, in the Shastra, in the spiritual master, in the saintly persons. Or we can just take shelter in our conditioned state of mind and just be defensive. So the opposite of humility is pride. If one is very proud, then they can't accept they've done anything wrong. And it's interesting, because if you want to be right, then we have to accept we have these 4 conditioned defects. Can anyone name one of them? Brenda? Imperfect senses, yeah. So if we have imperfect senses, then that means we're going to do what? Make mistakes, yeah. Exactly. We're hearing some noise at the back of the altar here, and we're thinking someone's putting everything away, but they might just be sitting there banging things and just sitting on a chair. Just like one time there was a travelling party, and the leader of this travelling party was training some young devotees, and in those days we all took cold showers. So this one younger devotee went into the cold shower, and he was going like this. He was just banging it and going, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But he actually wasn't even taking a shower, he came out bone dry. So to anyone who heard him would think, oh, he's having a shower and he's having a tough time with the cold shower. He was having such a tough time with the cold shower, he wasn't even having a shower. So, of course, if someone finds it too austere to do that, then the best thing is to take a warm shower. We shouldn't forgo taking a bath just because it's too cold. But so the imperfect senses means that we can make mistakes. We made the mistake of thinking, oh, this guy's been having a bath, but he still smells something funny there. And then because we tendency to commit mistakes, then imperfect senses, then we may cheat. Someone may say, oh, what about this? And we don't know, because we've got imperfect senses, then we sometimes make out as if we do know something. We don't want to be found out to be in ignorance of something, so we cheat by just making out as if we do know something. And what's the last one of the 4 defects? Subject to illusion, yeah. So all these things are linked together. Due to imperfect senses, we can be subject to illusion. Like if someone is lost in the desert, they may see what they think is a mirage on the desert, and in their illusion they run towards it. But by running, they become even more dehydrated. So because we've been in this material world for such a long time in this condition, then it's very difficult for us to give control over to someone else. But this is what we're doing. We're giving control over to Krishna, Krishna's representatives, and especially the spiritual master, where we're accepting that this person knows what is best for me better than I know what's best for me. And therefore we have full faith. Now it's not advised that we act in blind faith. Therefore Krishna says, Tadvari pranipatina paripashnena sevaya upadikshyanti te aginam ganinas tattvadarshanaha. That we should approach a spiritual master. In order to learn the truth, we should approach a spiritual master and make some humble inquiries, and render service unto him, and he will impart knowledge unto us because he has seen the truth. So that means he has seen the truth, means he's received that from his spiritual master, etc. This is parampara. And we have to approach a spiritual master. It's not that we just sit there and wait and see if Krishna will send a spiritual master to us. Remember, we are supposed to be Krishna's servants, he's not ours. And he's telling us what to do. He's saying approach a spiritual master. He's not saying just chant Hare Krishna and a spiritual master will come along and ask you if you want to be his disciple. It's not like that. So this means a little bit of humility is required just to even approach someone else and say, I'm a fool, can you help me? Can you give me some direction? Can you take care of me? Can you take charge of me? This is the basic relationship with the spiritual master. Sometimes it's been said that the question was there, should one feel like a fool in front of the spiritual master? Prabhupada says, no, one is a fool in front of the spiritual master. And Prabhupada himself showed this. He considered himself to be fool number one. And in his humility, even when the devotees tried to glorify him, he humbled them. He said, it's taken till the fag end of my life to do anything. And such humility you cannot compete with. You know, it's like, well, if at the fag end of our life we can do even a millionth of what Prabhupada did, you know, we consider ourselves successful. But this is the success of the devotee's humility. He doesn't take credit for it himself. This is something we have to practice. Personally speaking, you know, we'll find I'm quite keen to take credit for things, and that's something which I'm working on, is to give credit to others, give credit where credit's due. And it's Krishna is more pleased when we credit others. When Prabhupada was given credit for the achievements, he said it was only by the mercy of his spiritual master and his disciples. He said, I couldn't do anything without my spiritual master sending these disciples along. So similarly with us, we can think of so many situations we could be in which we wouldn't be here except for the mercy of Krishna and the devotees. So in this way we can develop some humility. But here we see that the king, being in the mode of passion, then as it's mentioned in this chapter, that the one in the mode of passion is sometimes quick to anger. I think it was in the previous one. So he became angry with Jadbharat, but even though he was angry, then still he was very intelligent about how he approached the situation. But his anger didn't affect Jadbharat because he was on the Brahma-bhuta platform. So Brahma-bhuta means self-realized. Sometimes it's also mentioned as self-satisfied. One is on the Brahman platform. It's interesting, as we were reading that, I was reminded of one mistranslation of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the Hungarian language. We talk about the transcendental plane, but in the initial days of the Hungarian Yatra, then someone had mistranslated it as the transcendental aeroplane. Mm-hmm. So people were thinking that if they performed devotional service, then they will actually board the transcendental aeroplane. Of course, at the time of death, when the Vishnu Dutas come with the flower aeroplane to take you back to Godhead, then that might be the case. But there was another example of imperfect senses. So the tendency to cheat, we have to overcome that. If we get something wrong, then it's a stronger person to admit they got it wrong than just to cover it up with some kind of defense. And sometimes the defense can be, oh, the instruction might be right, but it wasn't presented so nicely. So it's that can be another type of bogus defense. That, in other words, we're saying, I'm not humble enough to take it unless it's given the exact way I want it. The medicine has to come perfectly, or else you can keep it. So that's up to us if we want to be like that. Or we can take the gold from a filthy place. Even if someone's motivation isn't correct, it may well be that someone is given an instruction and we don't like the way it's come, but if the instruction has got some good lesson in it, then if we're sincere enough, we will take that instruction, we'll learn from it. So one who's on the Brahma Bhuta platform, then they actually are not afraid of anything to do with the gross or subtle material body. So he talks about the 5 gross and the 3 subtle elements. Can anyone name 5 gross?
Earth, water, fire, ether.
Yeah. It's interesting how ether is something you can't see, but it's still considered a gross material element. Does anybody know what the function of ether is? Yeah, carries a sound, that's right. Which is also a gross thing, it's perceivable in that with the gross senses. And then the 3 subtle elements. Yeah, very good. Thank you, John. So mind, intelligence and false ego. So one in the Brahma Bhuta platform means that they're on the Brahman platform, then the platform of the spirit soul, which is above any of the material elements. And therefore, they're not afraid. Vijay Bharat was not afraid in the least about physical harm to his body. He was understanding everything happens by Krishna's arrangement, and if it's time for this body to be finished, then that's it. If it's not, it won't happen. And similarly, he doesn't feel insulted because he realizes that everything which comes his way is due him by the law of karma, or by some interaction of the material energy. So this is, it's not something that we can fake. We have to come to that platform to properly get the benefits of being on that platform. And the way of arriving at that platform is by associating with everything on that platform. So for example, what we're saying, what we're hearing, what we're doing, what we're eating, what we're seeing, engaging all our senses, all these things are engaged in devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering, praying, being a well-wisher. So all these different aspects, if we keep on training our mind to be like this, then it becomes our friend. And instead of giving us ideas of how to avoid surrender, how to avoid Krishna consciousness, it starts giving ideas how to engage in devotional service, how to improve in devotional service. So the more devotional service, more devotional hearing and chanting we put in, then the more that's actually going to start to manifest again and again. And then it comes to the point where, due to that association, then we're in the fire. So we're already starting to catch fire a bit. Just like if there's a fire blazing and you put some wood in there, even if it's damp, eventually it will dry out and then it will start to catch fire. So we may be in different stages of catching fire or dampness due to our association with matter. But guaranteed that if we just remain in the fire, then we will catch fire and we'll also take on that original spiritual nature, which is our true nature. So we'd just like to stop there and ask if anyone's got any questions or comments.
Just an example of if a person is ripe for Krishna consciousness and he doesn't take the step forward and he stays where he is, then eventually he goes stale. So, and you were mentioning about accepting Diksha. So, is there a possibility that if you take too long, you can end up missing the boat?
Certainly, there's verses in the Shastra which Prabhupada quotes that whether by seeking out a spiritual master or one by providence comes into association with a spiritual master, then one should accept initiation. So it's the single most important thing we can do with our human form of life is to accept the spiritual master. So, of course, there's many different ways to accept. It's not simply that we just follow some rules and then we get a new name and then we've joined the club and then that's it, we've made it, so now we can relax. It's we always have to be going forward. And what was that you said at the beginning of the question?
About going stale.
Yeah. So if the fruit becomes ripened and you leave it there, then it will start to go rotten. It has to be taken and utilised. So if we're ripe, then we should utilise that situation. So that's in Krishna consciousness at any stage, whether it be first, second, third initiation, third and sannyas. It's not that we just come to a platform and then we can rest on our laurels, meaning we can rest on what we've done for the previous 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We see even there's examples of Babas in Vrindavan who've been chanting 64 rounds a day for many years, and then there's occasions where some of them have fallen victim to Maya. So it's as long as we're in the material world, there's danger at every step. It's not that there's danger at every step to a certain point. As long as we're there. The nectar of devotion it's mentioned that we're only know we're safe as when we're back in the spiritual world at Krishna's lotus feet. So as long as we're here, even we see Jad Bharat, as the Bharat Maharaj, he was in the preliminary stages of love of Godhead, which is extremely elevated platform, and yet he was distracted. What to speak of ourselves who are struggling with an art and a vritti, so we certainly can't stop moving forward. We always have to be looking to think what's the next step, and certainly to take initiation is such a great gift, because we've taken birth with our material mother and father, and then spiritually we take birth. The Shastra is considered the mother, who tells us who is the father, which is Krishna. He's the father, and the spiritual master is also like the father. So then one of the early instructions of Krishna to Arjuna is to seek out a bona fide spiritual master. And Prabhupada has very kindly shown us how to understand what is a bona fide spiritual master. So then all it requires is that we go forward and do that. And we shouldn't think ourselves to be unqualified to the point where we're not going to do that. We can think we're unqualified, but the spiritual master will qualify us. Just like one receives second initiation. It's not that one has reached a platform of Brahman, but one has reached a platform where one is now able to be trained by a spiritual master to become a Brahman. This is the situation.
Yeah, it was just when I was on the Bhakti program, there was a devotee that had been at Chaitanya College for about a year before me, and he got initiated the day after he left, because I think he just wanted to see what it was like. And when he realised nothing was really any different as far as he was concerned. So then he just left the next day. And Mahatma was making the point that it would be good if there was annual diksha. that every year you recommit, you stand before the fire again, with ribbon on, and you take the full vows again. He said if anyone has a problem with that, then he would ask why they have a problem with that. And then just the last kind of comment was Shri Ramash was saying we tend to place more emphasis on the Diksha Guru and de-emphasize the Shiksha. And quite often on a day-to-day basis, it's more the Shiksha that's engaging that devotee, and taking them along in his progressive path, background.
Yeah, so a few very good points there. I'll try to respond to some. The first point was someone took initiation, the next day they left because they just didn't see what it was like and didn't feel any difference when they left. So that means their intention in the first place wasn't right, that's why they didn't even notice the difference. Personally speaking, when I got my first initiation, the very next day I felt like I could chant my rounds a lot easier. So if you take it seriously, you take it as something very important, then Krishna within your heart will reciprocate with you. I'm not saying that I took it very seriously, but to me it was certainly I felt like it was a responsibility. Someone was taking my karma, so they were taking responsibility for me. Somebody they hardly even knew, and I thought this is really merciful that someone would do this. Because I'm not even responsible enough to want to accept my own karma, what to speak of someone else's. So I was thinking this Guru Parampara thing is such a blessing on the conditioned soul to help them get out of the entanglement of Maya. So if we take it seriously, then the reciprocation will be there. If we don't take it very seriously, we may not notice much. So taking it seriously means we can. There's a nice book called Spiritual Master and Disciple, where there are many quotes from Srila Prabhupada there, and we can understand this seriousness of it. And if we have some gratitude for that, then that makes all the difference in life. If we're not grateful for things, then someone may do something nice for us, and all we want to do is ask them for more and ask them for more. We don't really, we just expect something. Another point we were making after that was
Annual.
I don't know if it's actually a practice, but I know there was one spiritual master who was required that if any of his disciples broke their vows, they should take them again. Because so that was something he said. I don't know if that's something historically which happened, but it was something he was advocating. And then the last point you made was about Shiksha and Diksha. And it's a very good point, because all too often it happens is that, and I seen it one time, I was in Hungary, and so I shouldn't say where it was. So I wasn't in Hungary, it was somewhere else. And one particular spiritual master had arrived, and I'd been to Hungary many times for different reasons, and on this occasion I'd seen all these devotees emerge who I'd never seen before. And I was thinking, where all these devotees come from? And Bhagavatam says, well, it's because the spiritual masters here, they all come out of the woodwork. And just like, sometimes in the wood there's woodworm, and then if you knock it, sometimes the worms will come out. So they were hiding. So anyway, he says, but watch, once he's gone in a few days, you won't see him again. And sure enough, that was the case. And I thought, it was actually, I felt quite, although you can't feel compassion for one who's more advanced than you, because compassion is something that you have for a junior. But I felt quite sorry for this spiritual master, that although he probably knew it, and Felix and I were talking about this the other day, about Kadamba Raj also mentioned a similar thing, and people just show up for a certain program, but you never see him whether they do anything else. He knew it, but very kindly tolerated it to help people in whatever way he could. So probably the spiritual master also was aware of it. But I thought to some extent they were cheating, because they were showing up, making out that they were really fired up, and as soon as he was gone, they never came around, they never do any service. And so taking on a spiritual master means that we're offering ourselves to be his limb, to be an extension of him, which means he says, go and do this, and we do it. And it means also that remember also Shiva Ramanuja himself saying that he expects his disciples to follow the local management, and that way they're following him. Because the spiritual master is not personally present everywhere, physically present. He's present as in his instructions. And as long as the instructions which are being given are engaging us in devotional service and helping us advance in devotional service, then the spiritual master is happy that someone's given that shiksha. There's also another consideration is there's two types of shiksha. One is instructions which engage us in everyday service, which is going to help purify us and develop a service attitude, humble service attitude, so that we can chant properly. The chanting is asking for service. Please engage me in your devotional service. And the service is giving us the opportunity to become tolerant while in association of others whom we ordinarily in the material world might not choose. It gives us opportunity to do things which may be beyond our material expertise or even inclination. So we learn to do things for Krishna and go beyond our own limitations. But then there's the other instruction, which is when one becomes self-realized. The other shiksha is that the spiritual master will tell you instructions on the liberated platform as to your eternal relationship with Krishna. That's not likely to be your day-to-day person. That's more likely to be your Diksha Guru or some other very advanced personality. And the etiquette in that regard is that if there is someone who can instruct you better on your eternal relationship once you come to that platform, then you would seek permission from your spiritual master to take instruction from that person. Not that you would disregard the spiritual master and say, this person's more advanced, I'll go to him instead. That's an impersonalist move, that. So this is the advice in the Shastra, that we check with our spiritual master about taking instruction from someone else. That doesn't mean to say that someone says clean the temple and you're thinking, oh, but I wanted to clean the prasad room, let me call my guru and see if he's okay with that. This is day-to-day instruction. And we're talking about something which is on a much more higher level of our eternal constitutional position. So of course we don't have to worry about that just now, unless I'm mistaken, then we're probably all in the process of anatta-nivritti to some degree. And the day-to-day instructions are going to help us overcome that. Because the soul is amazing according to Bhagavad Gita. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and others even after hearing about him don't understand at all. So fortunately we're hearing about the amazing qualities of the spirit soul. You take Srila Prabhupada for example, pure devotee, eternally liberated soul, and there's nothing that he can or won't do for Krishna. Unconditional devotional service, this is what it means. So to learn unconditional devotional service, sometimes it means that we have to do things we don't want to do, or we don't get to do things that we want to do. And of course it's not that that's the order of the day every day, that if you want to do something, then you're not getting to do it. It's not like that. Sometimes, and Prabhupada describes this as being the process of surrender, is that sometimes we don't get to do what we want to do, and sometimes we have to do other things that we don't want to do. So this means it's going beyond just what we want to do. I want. Prabhupada gives a good example of this. I've mentioned it before, but it's relevant, so we'll say it again. There was one devotee who off his own back decided to start chanting extra rounds, but it meant that he wasn't doing any practical service to the point where he would chant 64 rounds a day. And the reports were going to Prabhupada, now he wants to chant 64 rounds a day, and then they say now he wants to live outside the temple community, and now he wants to live in a tree or on a tree. Prabhupada says, I want, this is just sense gratification. Up to that point the devotees were thinking he's so renounced, he's so advanced, we don't have that inclination to live in a solitary place and live in a tree and chant 64 rounds a day. So some of us may want to do that, but if the spiritual master says it's sense gratification, So whatever we're doing, which is out with instructions, which are going to help us advance, then that is considered, according to this example, as sense gratification. And the spiritual master, sometimes we see also apparent contradictions, like Prabhupada talks about Buddhist, we should be in the highest service, we should dedicate ourselves to this, etc. Then on other occasions he might tell a devotee to be a pujari and dedicate their life to that. So the spiritual master, the main thing is the prescribed duty. You know, if the spiritual master says you should be a pujari and you think, no, but I want to go on Sankirtan, then how is that pleasing the spiritual master? And this is the nature of devotional service, is that it might be that this is how the spiritual master wants Krishna to reveal himself through this particular service. This is what you need, and he's seen something in us. So we should be very careful not to resist the instructions of the spiritual master. And even things a bit difficult, we find that if we just accept and we go ahead with that, if some instructions given us go ahead with that, we'll get the actual reciprocation from Krishna within the heart. And sometimes we won't get that. Mostly we won't get that until we follow instruction. This is how we make advancement too. If everything has to be, we have to check it with our mind first. So we've been told this, let's see if my mind's happy with this. No, it's not happy with that, so we're not doing that. And until I can understand it. So we're trying to conceive it in the confines, the restrictions of the mind. But to go beyond that, then we have to accept in faith that this is going to take me beyond it. And that's, I remember one situation when I mentioned this before also, was that Palindra gave me some instruction and I said, I can't see how that's going to do any good. She says, no, you won't until you do it. So I was arguing with her, she says, in my experience, when I was given an instruction like this, and she said that she's also quite argumentative about the situation. She said, I just did it, and then I seen, she says, just do it. If you do it, then you'll see. So I did, and I did. And this is the situation in devotional service, that because we're blind, we won't see. But by following instructions of the spiritual master, that will chakshush, that will open our eyes. Om Jnana Disha. Laura, and then Hoxton.
In my yoga classes for this next few months, we are talking about, I have a theme and we're talking about cultivating different things. For example, patience, compassion, gratitude. Gratitude is the first one actually, because I thought it was quite important. I was reading up on things to say to the students, and I found something that said gratitude, as long as you're truly grateful, then all the other qualities will follow. So do you think that's right? If you are truly grateful, then humility and tolerance and everything else will then follow after that, but gratitude is like one of the most important qualities?
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. To be grateful means that then we can become humble as well, because if we're not grateful, we just expect and demand, and we have some kind of proud attitude. So someone who's proud, they're not really that grateful for things, are they? They just expect everything to be centered around them or for their service, for their purposes. But grateful, we see in Srila Prabhupada, his gratitude was there. And these different qualities, they actually feed each other. If one is humble, we'll be grateful. If one is grateful, we'll be humble. So certainly if we take the time, it actually means that we have to take the time to consciously think over our blessings in life and our good fortune. And of course we hear it almost every day. Oh, we're so fortunate to be devotees, and it almost becomes like a cliche. But we should really try to meditate on that so it doesn't become a cliche, because it still has meaning no matter how many times you say it.
I was just a couple of times you mentioned in class that we're at the Anata and the Vritti stage. So of course the speaker could just be being humble, referring into himself. If a new devotee is listening to someone who's been practicing Krishna consciousness for quite a long time, then he may become discouraged if he thinks after practicing for such a long period of time, used to have the Anata Nivritti stage. And it's said that when 75% of the anatas are removed, then you reach the stage of Nishta. So I was wondering, how do you honestly know where you're at? And how do you not discourage someone without pretending that you're not where you are at?
Well, generally by someone's example, you see they might say that they're in one stage or another. You can see by their example when they face various tests, how they go through them, how they overcome them. It's like, ordinarily Prabhupada wouldn't say, I'm a pure devotee, I'm on the platform of Prema. No, he wouldn't be saying like that, but devotees weren't in any doubt about it. There wasn't anything he was afraid of. His name, Abai, fearless, was completely characteristic of his nature. He was fearless. So to answer the question is, one way the devotees won't be discouraged if they see someone practicing for a long time who's still saying they're an Anata Nivritti, is that Anata Nivritti is, even if you're on an Anata Nivritti stage, you can still be around for many years and practicing devotion service, which is a good thing. It's not like it stopped them. You could think, oh, he's still at that stage after so many years, what's the point of trying? Well, if you don't try, you stay in the material world for longer, then you have to come back to that same question again, next life, next life. So we still, whatever's between us and Krishna, whatever is basically our false ego, so whatever hurdles we have between where we're at now and go back home to Godhead, we have to overcome them. If we shy away from those hurdles, then all that will happen is we'll take shelter of material energy, we pile on some more karma, come to the point where we're feeling destitute in the material world, turn back to Krishna, burn off a lot of karma, come back to the same realization, and then have the same question again. So we may as well just face up to it now and just continue with it. But the good news is that although Anata Nivritti seems like it's a long time, a few years, a few decades is nothing compared to millions of births in the material world. We've accumulated karma, conditioning, and when that's over, the next stage is Nishta, and then it goes on to these other consecutive stages come much quicker. The acceleration is much quicker. It's like a tipping point. So it's just like rowing. You're rowing a boat, and while you're rowing it, there's about 108 anchors, and you think, oh, okay, I'll take this anchor up, and you're getting a little bit of progress in another one, and then finally you got all the anchors up, and then you're able to row free. So that's why it says even one of the roaming senses can take away a person of even steady intelligence. So therefore it's always important that we just keep on trying to fix our mind, Eki Hakru Nandana, become single pointed, and not allow ourselves to be distracted from Krishna consciousness. So in our chanting, we don't just take it as 2 hours just to let the mind ramble on, and we can just go there, meanwhile, the mouth's just chanting the Maha Mantra, we're not listening to a single thing. We'll come to the point where we think, oh, what's the point of chanting? And you say, what is the point of chanting? Like that. What is the point of chanting is that we have to hear. Shravanam, Kirtan, it's not Kirtan, Shravanam. So we have to hear it. So that's when we're chanting, we have to be hearing. And when we're serving prasadam, we should be doing that for the pleasure of devotees. When we're worshipping the deities, we do it for the pleasure and convenience of the deities, not for the convenience of ourselves. It's one of the kind of basic aspect of, or basic principle of serving the deities is that you're doing it for their pleasure and for their convenience. So we don't take shortcuts when we do it. We take shortcuts immediately. I say to Krishna, I don't really believe in you, so I'm just going to do this for my convenience. And I found myself doing that, and I realised that this is not serving the Lord. This is serving my one that He's loving. So I corrected myself and then do it properly. And that's the same thing with any type of service we're doing. As Vaisheshika says, always better service. So even if even if you're apparently doing the same service every day, you're thinking, how can I do this nicer? How can I do it better? Do it more efficient? If you're cleaning the prasad room, we do it more efficient so we can get time to do some other service, or get some more time to read, or so we can clean in behind the shoe racks which never get cleaned, certain things, because this aspect of always better service means that we're always thinking how to go forward, and that's momentum for it, rather than thinking, when's this agony going to stop? The agony of the material world will never stop as long as we're got the enjoying spirit. So we have to, just like this Prabhupada Leela, we have to overcome the enjoying spirit by serving Krishna's enjoying spirit, and then we enjoy even on a better platform. Take a simple thing. Before we came to Krishna consciousness, what were we eating out there? Toast and beans, fish and chips, something like that. And now we're having amazing feasts. You introduced even to a new world of cuisine. And what type of associates did we have? And now we've got people who are actually real well-wishers who would help us in any situation. So everything, materially, socially, it's all an improvement. So we've got a lot to be thankful for. Sorry, we've gone quite a bit, so we should stop now. Just going to move the key. Key.
Sri Prabhupada Prana Prabhu ki.